Welcome to HumBot, your podcast where we talk about application of AI agents in business environments. You'll hear from professionals who are builders, buyers, users, and thought leaders adopting AI agents at scale in their businesses. We have an amazing speaker today to talk about what it takes for an organization to not just take the baby steps, but go through the whole journey. It is my absolute pleasure to invite Sokratis. Sokratis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Sajif, and I'm really happy to talk about how to operationalize Gen AI and agents today with you.
Excellent. Maybe let's start with a brief introduction and just your story on how you got there. What kind of a role are you playing?
Sure. My current role is Gen AI Black Belt for Google. My team covers the top customers in EMEA and APAC, and I have the chance to create architecture designs for all these huge customers to operationalize their Gen AI agents, machine learning, etc. But my experience comes also from AWS, but I used to perform a similar type of role. And other companies like Deloitte, Intel, I have an academic background from Yale, from Imperial, and happy to share my experience with you.
Excellent. And I'm sure the listeners will have a great time just understanding, synthesizing whatever you've learned. So maybe let's get into the thick of things, if you're okay.
Sure.
Clearly, AI agents has created hype, a lot of hype. And there's also like a disillusionment organizations are facing today, at least from the ones I speak to. They go through these interesting pilots, and then they don't know what comes after the pilot because they probably don't have the foundations. They don't have the security in place. If you were advising someone who was taking the first step around the world of AI agents and thinking of building a robust foundation, how would you advise?
Before I even start touching the keyboard, the goal is to find if agents or Gen AI can bring business value to me.
Yeah.
This is extremely important. That means that the educational piece is the first step that a company needs to take. That means they need to understand what is Gen AI, what is an agent, what is the return of investment that I will have if I use that. This analysis most of the times is missing, and this is where the different companies, they might have problems to move from a POC into production. Then after we solve the problem of people, then we need to solve the problem of processes, as you already know, and then it is time about technology. And technology, depending on the scale, we can have different options that we can discuss today.
Interesting. And yeah, I think that's a great takeaway already. Focus on the business problem. Don't get enamored by tech. And then let's assume that's been done now. And there is if not a strong, a medium business case to go forward. Looking at the implementation, would you take an implementation of foundations in parallel with use cases, or would you think of it sequentially? Where is the role of a foundation in all this?
Very good question. First, we need to build some POCs to understand the technology, right? To understand what are the needs, to understand what are our needs. Because in the market, you might see, okay, I have all these frameworks, they implement something, but how can I adopt that in my use cases? In that case, after you have finished with the POCs, you have gathered all the technical needs that you have, and then it is the time to start building your foundations. It is more or less a little bit a parallel activity, if I may say, with a small shift. Let's say you start with POCs a little bit earlier to understand the needs, and then you start building your platform. Of course, all these different solutions, most of the times they require cloud infrastructure. So I assume that you already have in place a landing zone. It is very important. You need to have access to GCP projects or AWS accounts before you start implementing something. You need to have a foundation of data because otherwise you cannot irrigate the LLMs with something or your agents with something. And then it is the time to start building your agents for production. So key ingredients to summarize: platform, landing zone, to have your users to have access to implement things. Second, data layer. We need to have access to the data. Most of the times, most of the tools that we will use with agents is around data anyways. And then the third layer is we need to have the infrastructure to start building the Gen AI applications or agents that this is related mostly, as we have seen in DevOps world around dev staging, prod environments, and start building different parts in different environments as well that we can analyze if you want.
Somebody who's kind of considering agents as a greenfield activity on cloud, I think your advice is spot on. You need a foundational layer on infrastructure, which is landing zone, and then the data layer. Only then potentially you are in the right place to take value from agents. Now let's talk about then AI agents, assuming there is a business that's set up for infrastructure or landing zones. What's the foundation around the data side that you recommend when you meet customers? What kind of foundations on the data layer before we move to the agentic side?
It depends on the customer, but most of the times a data lake is one of the most important aspects, right? So that means in the past we had data warehouses, we had databases, but now we have unstructured, structured data combined together. And this can happen only through a data lake. And data lake also can ensure the data governance. That is a very important piece, right? Not all the users can have access to all the data. And if you have this foundation, it's also the first part of security around your data. That is very important.
And so is the data governance aspect around data, you talked about, you connected it with the concept of security. And as agents take actions, I'm presuming agents should not have kind of catch-all access to everything. So you can kind of have guardrails or permission sets around what access can be granted.
For sure. You need actually two different layers over there, actually three layers. You have first the layer of the tools. That tools might not be just data tools, might be APIs that they do a computation or something. Then you have the data layer, as we said, and then we have the agent layer. In the tools perspective, you need to have authentication, authorization, who is using this tool. And most of the times this happens between the agent and the tool, right? The agent can use specific number of tools or specific tools. Then you have users that they can use specific agents.
Yeah.
Over there, it is another point that we need to have authentication, authorization between the two. And the last layer is the agent needs to be aware about the data governance that the user follows in order to give access to data that this user can access only, and not to data across the whole business. And this is very important because an agent might use a tool that receives data that the end user cannot have access, right? So we need to catch this situation in general. So it is a complex environment with three layers, if I may say, of authentication authorization points that we need to have in place.
That's a great summary. And I think a great framework for anyone considering operating agents at scale, more from a data layer. Is there anything else around the data layer that we need to be covering before we move to the agentic side?
Data layer, we can talk from an agent perspective. A lot of different components are needed, like memory. That is something that we will cover later, probably. Memory is a very important aspect for agents because let's imagine that you have a chatbot that uses an agent, right? The agent has an interaction with the end user. We store all this interaction in sessions, as we used to call them, and this is the short-term memory of an agent. All this memory will be stored also into the data lake eventually for long-term memory. That means that you can, for example, if you return back to the chatbot, the agent needs to get the relevant history and start or continue the discussion that you had beforehand, right? So this memory can have PII data as well. So one thing that we need to consider is how we secure also the memory aspect of things. And another aspect is also about RAG, right? Retrieval Augmented Generation, that we need to have in place in the data lake. Why is that? Because most of the customers, what they used to do is they used to create a small vector database for one use case. My view of this is not good idea. We need to implement the RAG approach and the vectorization part centrally somewhere in order to enable multiple use cases with one flow, if I may say. So another consideration for the data lake layer is also to implement the RAG approach. I know that RAG, sometimes, it reduces the, how can I say that, the popularity that it had in the past, because now with the tools, we don't really need 100% to focus on RAG, but I think still it is important, and especially the memory, the long-term memory case that I mentioned, can be implemented with RAG. That means that you don't need to return the whole history of interactions with your users, only what is relevant.
And so let's dive into the agent topic. In terms of the execution of agents, the way we frame our product or our pitch within HumBot is agents do two things. They do, at an abstract level, they do reasoning and then they do actions. Mm-hmm. And only when they do both, an end user sees a business value that they appreciate. Just leaving with a reasoning output is potentially good enough, but not always. Just doing actions without having a clear reasoning path is also not good enough. Now, if we are to talk about actions first, because that's where a lot of new buzzwords are coming up. The two keywords that we always hear, one of them is potentially something that you may have personally contributed to, or Google is definitely to be blamed for that, which is the A2A. And the second big keyword is MCP. So are you able to just demystify what these words are and how do they relate to actions with tools?
Happy to answer this question. Well, first of all, MCP and A2A are two complementary protocols, right? They don't compete with each other and they can work very nicely together. Why is that? Let's start first with MCP. MCP is a protocol that helps you with the interaction of the tools, right? So it standardizes everything, and actually the agent can call a tool not by getting into the details of the APIs, etc., but by name, if I can put it extremely simple. So it simplifies a lot the interaction with the tools, and it has been created by Anthropics, while A2A is mostly around how two different agents can communicate with each other. Let me explain that a little bit.
Yes.
Let's imagine that you have a company that, and you have multiple developers. One developer likes to work with LangGraph to create agents, another one with Agent Development Kit or ADK from Google, that is the new framework, another one with Crew AI. So let's imagine that you want to create a chatbot that uses these three agents. How can you achieve that? You need to go and hard code the interaction between the different agents, and this is a very difficult task. So what Google said is, instead of having this issue, let's have a protocol that will enable the communication among the different agents and to make them talk the same language, actually. With that way, you don't really need to hard code everything into your backend, but more or less what you need to say is, I have these available agents, interact with them to the chatbot, right? And if you have a new agent, you can plug it immediately. The way that it works is each agent has something that we call it agent card, right? Agent card shows to the other agents what are the capabilities of an agent, how to interact with the agent, what is the security or authentication authorization that it needs to follow. And more or less, it is like a business card that we give you to someone, and he or she can call you for a specific reason. Then what is happening is, I talk Greek, you talk English, right? Yeah. The protocol unifies this in one language, let's say English, right? And then we have the 2-3 different agents to know how to talk with each other. Now, how MCP can work with A2A, sure, right? Let's imagine that we have an agent that uses multiple tools. In that case, you can leverage MCP servers, in order the agent to access the tools through this server by name, with a very, very simple and standardized way. And then we have the agent tools with MCP. But to talk with other agents, in that case, we can use the A2A protocol in order to communicate with each other. And most of the times what is happening is we have a root agent that collects all the different agent cards to know what are the available agents that we have. We used to call it client. All the specialized agents, we used to call them servers. And then this root agent, based on the agent cards, can call the different agents, and the different agents can call the tools through MCP. Does it make sense? Yes. So it is like a small tree. Root agent use A2A to communicate with specialist agents, and then specialized agents, they talk with the tools through MCP. And if I can put it simple, right, let's imagine that we have a scenario with doctors, right? I have a general doctor that is responsible to assess what is the condition of a patient. And then you have specialized doctors that I know this patient has issues with the heart, right? I need to send that to this specialist. I send the patient to the specialist, and then they start exchanging messages, the generalist with the specialist doctor. These messages can be images, videos, text, voice, everything. And until the time that we have an outcome from the specialist, then everything returns back, and then the generalist can have a perfect view of the patient. I hope that this example helped you.
That's a great example, and I think one of the very succinct and simple enough examples that I've heard, which kind of resonated with me, and I'm sure also with the non-technical users, listeners for us today. And as you were speaking about it, I was recounting our product build journey in HumBot. So we have this concept of planning agents and task agents. So a planner is kind of an orchestrator, and task agents pick up very specific instructions. But there was one catch. When we went through our product journey, we had to standardize on one framework around LangChain and LangGraphs because we just weren't sure if we can go multi-frameworks for our task agents. Now that I hear A2A, it kind of gives us the flexibility. So the right tool for the right job. So excellent.
Perfect point. Exactly this. You got the point.
Yeah. Now, talking of the MCP side of things, in large enterprises, security is always a massive consideration. So I understood the role of MCP in terms of actions on tools. How can we blend enterprise-grade security with MCP in its current form today? Or is that not the right question to be considering today?
Very important point. First of all, MCP is a protocol that is evolving, right? So right now it supports all the basics in terms of the security, right? Like HTTPS connections and all this secure messaging and everything. But to become enterprise ready or cloud ready, it requires a little bit of more development. Currently, what is happening is most of the companies, they create their security for their tools, for their authentication, authorization, and they need to plug it into MCP later on. Because, yes, MCP cannot cover the whole security stack, if I may say. And this is reasonable, right? What I see in the future happening is we have seen MCP collaborates with all the big hyperscalers or the big cloud providers. Yes. I assume at some point they will start creating managed services or MCP servers as managed services that will also accommodate the security measures and the access control and everything that cloud provider supports. The reason I'm saying that is because even currently you might have customers that they already have API hubs, that they already have implemented their security approach, right? In that case, now we jump and we say, oh, no, you need to use MCP. How these two worlds can come together. And I think this is where the future will be very interesting.
And I think one of the big tips for listeners and viewers today is what Sokratis just now said. It's an evolving protocol, but his deep expertise, Sokratis' deep expertise of the cloud businesses models tells us that over time there will be managed services, because I'm sure you've seen that over and over in your past. Some fledgling concepts have then become managed services on the cloud, which then are extendable and offered to customers. So I think we can keep the same mental model.
I hope so. I'm not 100% sure. This is my intuition.
Yeah.
And anyways, all these protocols, they need to run behind the scenes, yes, right? Without us need to know about this. Our goal and our developers' goal should be only to create agents. That means that they need to focus only to prompts, instruction prompts for the agent, how to create tools, just the tools, and how to interact with the LLM with the right way. The rest should be something that is running on the backstage, let's say.
100%. And behind the scenes, there are, if in large organizations, there are enterprise architects, IT governance leads, IT security leads who are kind of going paranoid with all this developer excitement, and they need a standardization. And if I were one of them, I would really love to be in a place where I believe in the future roadmap of any hyperscaler, there are managed services coming up, because then I can let experimentation continue till there is a service that wraps up everything in a secure way. Otherwise, we'll have to build it from scratch if I were one of those. So I think that's where what you said would potentially appeal to those sort of enterprise buyers who are considering decisions on whether to buy or build or wait for a few months.
I totally agree. And we have seen that waiting sometimes is a good practice, because I have seen this area in general, Gen AI, everything is evolving extremely fast. So sometimes every 3 months, we need to rethink what we have implemented and to create something new, or something new comes to us. And this, if you don't wait and you start immediately and jump immediately to something new and starting using that, probably, yes, it is not good a practice for an enterprise. It's better to see, to stabilize a little bit and then start using that.
Exactly. And on the A2A side, should we assume it's a fairly, I wouldn't say it's a completely evolved protocol, but we should assume it comes with the basics of security and scalability.
Yes, it supports, again, authentication, authorization, all the JSON RPC 2.0,
Nice.
formats and everything. Of course, the agents, the specialist agents, if I may say, they should be responsible also for authenticating the users, etc. So still, it is not like we have a complete end-to-end security approach, but the protocol itself and how it exchanges the messages, it follows all the security measures that we have in the market right now.
Interesting. Maybe in terms of inspiration for someone who's considering to use A2A, MCP together, are there any client use cases that you have come across that you can share, without giving the names, of course, just the business outcome and what's kind of the flow that they have architected?
First of all, we saw also the announcement of Microsoft using A2A. This is a signal that many customers, they want to use that.
Yes.
Online, you can find all of our references. We have customers for all the different verticals. I cannot disclaim their names, but we have seen a great interest, and especially currently with my colleague Heiko Holtz, we creating also some solutions about live streaming agents together with A2A and MCP. That means that many customers might ask about chatbots that not anymore you can type, and have a very basic interaction, wait for something and then get a response back. But because A2A supports fully asynchronous communication and interaction and streaming interaction, you can have a live agent like a real human being. And I see in the future that all the customer supports will change towards that direction. And imagine the power to have a chatbot that you can add dynamically agents to be available to the human agents or to your customer. A customer might ask a question, I want to talk or to book a flight, right? In that case, boom, you can bring immediately all the agents that are related to the flight booking. Or they want then to complain about something. Then you can jump and to bring all the agents that are available for this one. So I see a lot of movement there in the customer support in general. In media and entertainment, this is a huge domain, especially with all the new, not only agentic solutions, but Imagen, VO2, and other models that they can generate images, videos. It is a huge market out there. And yes, and many internal use cases, many internal use cases. And about the internal use cases, we have also another product that is very important. It is the Agent Space product. Why I'm saying that, I don't want to sell you now the products of Google, but what I want to say is the end goal is for business users or end users to use your agents, right? So somehow you need to simplify the interaction with those agents. And to achieve that, you need a UI. You need a place to have a central search platform for your data in order to give the right context to your agents. And then you need a way to expose those agents with a very easy way to your customers. So Agent Space does all this. And imagine now all the customers can have internally their personal assistant, if I may say, immediately. You can describe what you want from your data, from your emails, from your calendar, and immediately to get a response back. Oh, here is the data. Here's what I observed. If you want to book a meeting with that person, you can do it. And one very important aspect is the deep research agent that we provide to the customers. I hope, as you told me earlier, right, you use that.
Yes.
And this is another huge domain of use cases that I have seen. Deep research that can be linked with public World Wide Web and private data sources is a killer use case. Because with that way you can say, I want to analyze the market about this type of retail, for example, in London, in this area. Could you do this analysis for me based on World Wide Web and this data that I have internally? Click and press send. It gives you the plan, accept the plan, and it gives you the results. Behind the scenes is a multi-agent system that gives you a very clear and robust report.
I think your example around this real-time availability of expertise to customer support was a phenomenal one. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, if in this podcast conversation, we suddenly moved into kind of the finance ROI aspects and we needed a CFO equivalent to come and add value to our conversation, wouldn't it be fantastic to have a kind of a digital avatar of a CFO being made ready real time to answer the questions that we both think are also important, in addition to considering the technical implementation side? So the summary of all my, as I hear you, is that it's probably our imagination that's the constraint. The more we imagine, the more we build.
Definitely. It is our imagination, plus we need to start using things, right? I have seen many customers, they say, oh, Gen AI. But if you don't use it, you cannot really understand how far you can go.
Yes.
And you can go really, really far, right? So I suggest to everyone that they need to start using even simple applications like a Gemini application. It has everything out there for you. You can use that immediately in order to understand how to talk with a model, how to interact with this. And this will give you a lot of insights, how you can improve your efficiencies across your day.
Indeed. And just the corresponding aspect is building drives imagination, clearly. So that's one key summary from you. The other big area is the more we build, the more we have frameworks for time to value and return on investment.
Yep.
That's something we saw in our product journey. What was traditionally the work of an expert taking 100 hours, now with HumBots plus an expert, we do it less than 5 hours. And when we project that kind of a framework to customers, their decision is all potentially made just looking at the ROI. And then they obviously need to validate the product for security and scale and governance and these aspects. So I guess the same mental model should be adopted by most enterprise managers of different product or program streams, if I may.
I totally agree. And sometimes we have also an issue about job security, if I may say, because some of the managers, they worry that if I reduce now the effort from X amount of people to Y,
yes,
in that case, what I will do with all these people, right? My suggestion is you need to start upskilling those people with new skills that they need in the Gen AI domain. For example, you said earlier, right, imagination. Imagination comes with prompt engineering. If you already know a domain, why not being specialized on how to create the best prompts for this particular domain in order to improve efficiencies? So they need to repurpose a little bit the skills of their people, and this will be really, really good also for the employees, not only for the employer. So don't worry about your jobs, but be ready to upskill yourself.
And that's, I think, one of the biggest takeaways from conversations like these, where, yes, we see this insecurity at scale when potential enterprise users, not buyers, because buyers want efficiency. They want to drive more value for their investments, which is understood. But sometimes users who probably tie themselves to very mundane tasks clearly have this insecurity when they see agents. So one of the points that you made is obviously upskilling their skills. The other aspect that we potentially see now, the more we talk to customers, is can they scale beyond the current target set of customers? And I'll give you just an example to make the point. So when we created our product as HumBot, we thought this product is tailored to the enterprises who need these data engineering, Gen AI expertise, deep expertise. As we met customers, the smaller SMB and mid-market customers who potentially may not have hired anyone are also now a potential for agents, because all they do is they probably use the agent once every day or once every month, but they still get the value and they could not have hired anyone. So there's obviously upskilling and scaling of the current expertise set to meet new customer categories who probably are not in the traditional set. And that's something we tell our customers to think of rather than kind of job losses. But I do agree with you. Legacy businesses have this very important consideration to make. There is headcount to be leveraged.
Yes, but overall it's like industrial revolution, right? So it is exactly the same thing. The employees, they had to learn how to use the machines instead of doing everything manually. It is the same story. And I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And in terms of your own journey, Sokratis, could you talk about your own upskilling and learning journeys? Because I still remember you had come into AWS, and I wasn't sure if you, back in the days, and I wasn't sure if you were well versed with the cloud then. But it took you not a lot of time to be a thought leader on what was called machine learning operations or MLOps back then, if I phrase it correctly. So can you just talk about how you approach upskilling or how you have approached it?
For sure. First of all, as you know, I'm a weird character, right? I like to push myself to the edge, right? And I like whatever is unknown. So from my side, I started with AWS building machine learning solutions for our customers. But very soon I realized that actually a cloud is not a world for data scientists. They need somehow to simplify the way that they operate on the cloud in order to move everything to production. So this need and this challenge, because I'm coming from a data science background, forced me to collaborate with DevOps. Collaboration is a very first important point that you need in order to upskill yourself. You need to understand the domains. You need to understand data engineers, DevOps, security, in order for me to understand how to operationalize my machine learning models. This helped me a lot. So collaboration, it was amazing. Nowadays, if I can move some years later, I went to a massive amount of customers. This gives me plenty of experience. I love being with customers. If I stop being with customers, probably, I don't know, I will be depressed at some point, because this gives me feed to innovate. So the second thing is, don't worry about challenges. Jump into big challenges. Try to solve with customers. Work backwards. This is very important. Mm-hmm. Fail fast. Don't worry about this. It is better to fail fast rather than fail after 1 year. And the success will come. And the third one is continuously reading, improving, especially nowadays, right? We need to read every day what is coming on. I have the benefit that I am in Google, and I can see everything from inside, and you cannot imagine how fast everything works. So it is tough work because of this era, but at the same time, at some point, I feel like I'm in a playground of innovation. So for me, I have achieved at least my job to become also my hobby. So this is very important as well. Enjoy what you are doing, and then you will upskill yourself much easier.
Exactly. I think the one of the key aspects that you kind of mentioned is also collaboration, and that cannot be ruled out, not today, not tomorrow, at any time, no matter how much tech evolves. And also these concepts and frameworks still look like day one, or we hear it's still day one. There is so much more to come. And in some ways, it's leveled the playing field for all of us. Us being experts on something traditionally doesn't make us Gen AI experts or the experts in building agents. So I think the opportunity is now for everyone to come, grab, and scale.
One advice, if I may interrupt you, is whatever we do, we need to have strong foundations. So I suggest everyone who wants to try Gen AI, as you said, now the starting line is the same for everyone, right? But at least before you start the race, build your foundational knowledge around Gen AI in order to understand the key concepts, and then jump into frameworks, jump into the solutioning, if I may say.
Indeed. So maybe let's just take a recap of this very interesting conversation we've had so far. So obviously we started with having the right business outcomes in mind. We then talked about doing POCs to understand the art of possible. Then we said you then can think of foundations. And the first point was infrastructure foundations, which included security. Then the data foundation, where we talked about memory and those concepts, which we'll shortly come to. And then we talked about the agentic foundation, specifically focused on actions, A2A. Given all this, potentially the last step we could potentially discuss is, as a business owner, if I've gone through these steps and I've built certain agents, and now I'm trying to see if the agents are the right fit at all interactions, I'm potentially looking at some evaluation frameworks. So great job building so far, getting so far, but now I need to be sure that what's built is fit for purpose. What guidance would you have on the evaluation framework side?
Actually, there are 3 key steps there, right? Evaluation is the offline evaluation that your developers, they need to run. And also they need the support of the SMEs in order to understand how an agent performs. I will talk more about this. The second is also you need guardrails, right? We didn't talk about this. Guardrails means that you need to check all the inputs and outputs and to make sure that you don't reply with a very toxic way, for example. And you need also monitoring. That monitoring is the real-time evaluation, if I may say. That means for every input that you get, you generate the same metric for evaluation. So if we return back now to the evaluation piece, evaluation can have different aspects. The first one is you can have operational metrics to check. CPU, memory usage, the infrastructure, does it work properly?
Yep.
Many people, they used to forget about infrastructure, but it's important. If you have, if your service is not up and running or your agent up and running 24/7 and you need it, it is the first important thing of evaluation. The second is about agentic Gen AI metrics that you might have, right? Now to evaluate an agent, it is a little bit difficult compared to classic Gen AI. Why is that? Because in a classic Gen AI, mostly you need to prepare, if you have data like input data and expected output, and to have different metrics like functional knowledge, toxicity, hallucination, all these things. Now you add into the equation also function calling. And if you have multi-turn operations, you need to check a sequence of function calls, for example, or you need to check. Overall, the complexity increases exponentially. So, first step, check operational metrics. Second step, check if the input and output is robust enough. Third step, check if the tools, they have been called correctly or not. And third check is about memory mostly. Memory is very important in general because it gives you all the data in order to evaluate if, for example, agent stayed relevant to the topic that a user used to ask. And all of this must to come together. How they can come together? Either you can evaluate your agent by having human in the loop. That means that you need to have real human evaluators to go and check your agent. Most of the companies, this is what they do. They do like crowdsourcing. They create an agent. They start. They have end users that they interact with the agent, like testers. They capture the interaction with the agent, the complete interaction, input, output, function calls, and everything, and then they move this to label data that later on they can fully automate the evaluation part. That means that now you know that this tester had this interaction, this input, and that output, and he was happy. Boom, I can use this now to generate the different metrics for me. So even evaluation is a huge topic, but it's also a journey. We can start with humans and we can move to fully autonomous automatic systems. And somewhere in the middle, we might have also other agents to evaluate the work of other agents. If we imagine a company, an analogy, right? We have the manager that assess how well an employee performs, right? So you can have, with the same way, agents that they assess the performance of other AI agents.
Yes. And in terms of assimilating all this, as you said, evaluation is an ongoing topic, but a pretty wide topic. However, from a foundational aspect, clearly memory, guardrails, human in the loop, and monitoring are 4 keywords I picked up from this, which are important things to plan for. And a sizable investment to allocate towards if you're thinking of applying agents at scale, and that to agents across multiple frameworks. You mentioned Crew AI initially, LangGraph. Now, if agents are different, running in different frameworks. Now, hearing all this, this looks like lots of new jobs or new job categories that we will come across.
Definitely, for sure. And one more parameter to add is about models as well, right? And what I want to say is currently in the market, all the foundation models, they have a life of 12 months. So after that, they decommission the models. All the hyperscalers, it is the same. So imagine that you need to do the evaluation also while you have a new version of the model in order to move on to the next one. That means that we have more jobs because the people, they need to know also how to interact with different models as well. So we might have jobs that we have people that are more relevant to Gemini, others that they are more relevant to Anthropic models, etc. And they need to know how to write the right prompts as well.
Mm. And maybe just extending this all the way to the end user front-end interface, Sokratis. So we talked about the concepts around agentic evaluation, but there is also about business outcome is a function of what the user sees or experiences. So we talked about one example of a real-time, probably a digital avatar that comes up, and there are agents behind the scenes powering that. How do you see the front-end user experience world evolving in all this? And are there any frameworks that are already there?
Very good question. Well, about this, the work that we are doing together with my colleague again, Heiko Hotz, we think that at some point the user interfaces will be completely different. Currently, we have used to use a chatbot to interact with, type text, having always a computer in front of us, doing things. In our case, we believe that we need to have completely different ways of interacting. That means that I don't know if it is a robot, if it is a speaker, if it is something around you that you can discuss. But I see that the UX researchers, they need to do a lot of work over there, because we need a little bit to move away from the traditional way of interacting with computers. And recently, I think I saw a new notion in the market, ubiquitous agents, that the agent might be everywhere without you knowing that. I don't want to scare you. That means that you have different services running around you and you can start using them. So the future will be, I think, quite interesting.
Definitely. Interesting, exciting, and as we discussed, it's for us to imagine and build, if nothing else.
Exactly.
In terms of how customers are allocating budgets around this topic, is there any trend or pattern that you're seeing? Are most of the budget allocations going towards prototypes, or now are they moving more budget allocations towards foundation build, or are they even going upstream to say, okay, now we have dedicated budgets around evaluations and whatever, and further up the stack in UX? Is there anything you are catching from customer conversations?
It depends on the maturity and the scale of the customer, right? A bank might invest more on guardrails evaluation and to make sure everything is robust and you can move that to production. Other smaller businesses, they might want to have a solution faster out there and try as you go. But I don't really agree. We need to be robust the whole time. But in that case, they prefer to spend more on the live interaction with the models or with the agents rather than the experimentation part. So my answer is about, it depends on the maturity of each business.
Mm. And clearly the business and how much of ROI do they see for agents,
of course,
in their business model? Some, like a business indexing on large scale customer service budget will clearly see a lot more ROI. So there is a role in this space, obviously, for the hyperscalers, which obviously you work for one of them. There is a role for end customers who are kind of end adopters. And there is this whole swath in between of different kinds of players. So we see players with frameworks like Crew AIs and land graphs. Then we see some accelerator agents who are not necessarily agents, but they just help accelerate. And then we see end user applications. And then we see just sort of players in the UX layer who just build UX layer for better interaction with agents. In your view, which potentially is the best layer to focus on for any new startup that's trying to think of a new business model in the agentic world?
Oh, very, very good question. Now you added the startups in between, right? Most of the startups, based on my experience, they focus on training their own model in order to achieve something. And they burn a lot of investments. I don't know if this is the right way. One advice that I can give is a successful startup is the one that brings expertise. That means that I suggest the startups to focus on a specific vertical to solve a specific problem, rather than focusing on solving something generic. Why is that? Because let's imagine that they create a new framework or a new platform approach or something like this. What will happen eventually is one of the big hyperscalers, they will come and they will implement that. In that case, the product of the startup does not make any sense. So, but if you have a use case that uses Gen AI or agents in order to solve a specific medical issue for a particular domain, then the startup will be successful, I think so.
So an application. And through this conversation, we kind of provided some mental models also for startups who are building such products on how should they build foundations. Obviously, within HumBot, our journey happened way before these protocols came. So we committed to decisions, but now that I hear from you, we will now open up a bit more to use A2A and different task agent frameworks with one planning orchestrator, which is kind of our journey.
You need to be agile anyways in this domain.
Yeah. So maybe just moving towards closing, if I'm a business user, Sokratis, I'm really keen to do something. I'm not very technical, but I'm very keen to make something happen. And I have a team that's kind of partially bought in and not. What would be your advice? How would you advise business owners to start taking those important decisions in this world of agents?
First of all, to take a decision if we need agents, if we need Gen AI, I suggest that they need to do an exercise to find out where they have bottlenecks of humans, of specific processes. Because this is the place where you can replace a human manual activity with an agent. Immediately you know that this is where I need to focus. Then the next part is, okay, I want to replace that now. How can I build that? So first we have decided the why and what, and then the how. And then about the technology, I suggest whatever brings them faster to an outcome is what they need to use. I don't suggest to use something that is extremely new. Let's use something that is somehow in the middle of yes, exactly. Probably 3 months old now, right? And with that, then they can easily implement everything. But I suggest also that they need to run trainings of their employees in order to show them the complete landscape. Nobody needs to know all the different details, but at least they need to know how everything is linked together. So what is LangChain? How is that related to Crew AI? Why ADK? Why A2A or MCP, as we discussed together today? So they need to have this foundational knowledge, if I may say.
Yeah, and I captured something very important, and it looks like we actually built a workflow during this conversation that we could potentially build and share in the notes of this, which is the first starting point is identify human bottlenecks or process bottlenecks. I think that's where the opportunity is all about. And as you said it, I was connecting it to the reason why we started HumBot. We thought that core deep expertise, such as yours or my co-founders or others, does not really scale. Because humans by design are committed to certain customers. Like you couldn't have done more than 3 customer implementations at one point in time during our time in AWS. But if we build agents that are curated forms of ourselves, Now, those agents could potentially match 300 customers in parallel. So clearly that was a human bottleneck use case that our business model is centered around. Also process, because humans' engagement is a process bottleneck. You can't have them engaging across. So it's fascinating how I was connecting our journey through this conversation as you started throwing these frameworks and ideas. Sokratis, it's been an absolute honor and really, really fantastic to have this chat. And I'm sure people would take away not just execution ideas, but also kind of forward-looking mental models, which I think is important in today's world.
Thank you for having me here today. It was very nice chatting with you, right? I saw that as an informal chat, and I hope that the audience will enjoy that. And anytime we will release something new, I will be happy to share that with you again.
That'll be fantastic. I think there's so much for the community to gain from your experience, and it goes way beyond your technical expertise. I'm referring now to your energy levels, the excitement that you bring to topics, and just the inspiration that you offer. So thank you so much for your time today.